My name is Mia, I'm 28 years old, and 4 weeks ago, I walked into my grandmother's house to find a hole in the floor where my heart used to be. My parents had sold my grandmother's antique Steinway piano, the one she promised would be mine, and used every cent of that $95,000 to buy my younger sister a brand new Porsche Panamera. They thought Grandma was too sick in hospice to ever find out. They thought I was too weak to tell her. They were wrong. When I finally told Grandma what they'd done, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply reached for her phone, dialed one number, and said 7 words that would destroy everything my parents thought they owned. It's time for them to meet my attorney. Before I tell you what happened next, and how a single birthday party turned into a courtroom drama without a judge, please drop a comment below, and let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let me take you back to the Tuesday it all started. It was a rainy afternoon in Philadelphia. I had just finished my last piano lesson of the day with a 7-year-old named Toby who had more energy than talent but a good heart. I was packing up my sheet music when my phone buzzed. It was my father, Richard. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask how are you. Eleanor's had another episode, he said. His voice was flat, like he was reading a grocery list. She's stable but the doctors say this is it. They're moving her to hospice this evening. Meet us at the hospital. We need to discuss logistics. Logistics. That was my father. His mother was dying, and he wanted to talk about schedules and asset management. I drove to the hospital with my stomach in knots. The wipers on my 10-year-old sedan squeaked against the glass, a rhythmic reminder of how tight money was for me. I worked 3 jobs, teaching piano, accompanying choir practices, and transcribing music, just to pay rent on my studio apartment and keep the lights on. My parents always told me that struggle builds character, a lesson they oddly never felt the need to teach my younger sister, Megan. When I arrived at the waiting room, the hierarchy of my family was on full display. My father stood by the window, checking his watch, looking annoyed that his day had been interrupted by mortality. My mother, Diane, was sitting on a vinyl chair, scrolling through her iPad, likely looking for a new outfit for her upcoming 60th birthday party. And then there was Megan. She was 24, glowing with the kind of health and rest that only comes from never having worked a 40-hour week in your life. She was texting, probably her boyfriend Daniel, giggling at something on her screen while her grandmother lay dying down the hall. "Good, you're here," my father said, turning away from the window. He didn't hug me. "We need to divide responsibilities." "How is she?" I asked, ignoring his agenda. "Is she awake?" "She's sedated," my mother said, not looking up from her iPad. "Dr. Evans says it's congestive heart failure. It's a matter of weeks, maybe less." "Now, listen, Mia. Your father and I have the business to run. We are in the middle of a very delicate merger with James Harrison." James Harrison was the father of Megan's boyfriend, Daniel. In my parents' eyes, the Harrisons were royalty. If Megan married Daniel, it would secure my parents' social standing and financial future. Everything in our lives revolved around impressing the Harrisons. "And Megan," my father continued, gesturing to my sister who was now checking her reflection in her phone camera, "is very busy helping your mother plan the birthday gala. It's a networking goldmine. We can't have her exhausted running back and forth to a hospice center." I stared at them. "So you're saying none of you are going to visit her?" "We will visit when we can," my mother snapped, finally looking at me. Her eyes were cold, calculating. "But someone needs to be there daily to monitor her care, handle the paperwork, and make sure the nurses are doing their jobs. Since your schedule is flexible, and you don't exactly have a high-pressure career, that falls to you." "I teach 30 students a week," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I have deadlines." "Music lessons," Megan scoffed, finally chiming in. "It's basically babysitting with noise, Mia. Just do it. You're her favorite anyway." "Fine," I said. I didn't argue because, truthfully, I didn't want them there. They sucked the air out of the room. Grandma Eleanor didn't need their cold calculations, she needed love. I'll go every day. My mother turned to my father and smirked. See, Richard. At least she's useful for something. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. I went straight to Grandma's room. She looked so small in that hospital bed. The machines beeped a slow, steady rhythm. I pulled a chair close and took her hand. It was paper-thin, blue veins mapping a life of 76 years. I'm here, Grandma, I whispered. Her eyes fluttered open. They were cloudy, but when they focused on me, they sharpened. Mia, she rasped. My brave girl. I'm going to be with you, I promised. Every step. I know, she smiled weakly. The others, they are busy counting their coins, aren't they? She knew them better than anyone. Over the next 2 weeks, I practically lived at the hospice center. I graded theory papers by her bedside. I played recordings of Chopin and Debussy for her. We talked about everything, music, art, the garden she loved. One afternoon, the sunlight was streaming in, hitting the dust motes dancing in the air. Grandma reached out and squeezed my hand with surprising strength. Mia, we need to talk about the Steinway, she said. The Steinway. The 1892 Model B that sat in her living room. It was magnificent, ebony finish, ivory keys that had yellowed slightly with age but still sang with a tone so rich it felt like velvet. I had learned to play on that piano. It was my sanctuary. We don't need to talk about that now, Grandma, I said gently. We do, she insisted. I have made my will, but wills can be contested. They can be misinterpreted by greedy lawyers. I want you to know, and I want you to hear me clearly, that piano is yours. I told Richard and Diane last month. I told them explicitly. It goes to you. They didn't mention that, I said, feeling a pit form in my stomach. Of course they didn't, she sighed, a sound of deep frustration. They see it as a piece of furniture worth a lot of money. They don't hear the music. But you do. You always have. Promise me, Mia. Promise me you will take it, play it, and never let them turn it into cash. I promise, Grandma, I said, tears pricking my eyes. It's safe. It's in your house. No one goes there but me to water the plants. Good, she whispered, closing her eyes. My house, my sanctuary. Keep it safe for me, Mia. If only I knew then what was happening just a few miles away. 2 days later, Grandma asked me to go to her house to pick up a few things. She wanted an old photo album from the bookshelf in the den, and her silk shawl. Take the key, she said, nodding toward her bedside drawer. I have my key, Grandma, I reminded her. No, she said, her voice odd. Use mine. Just in case. I didn't understand what she meant, but I took her key. I drove over to her house, a beautiful, historic Victorian home in a wealthy suburb. It was the house my father grew up in. It was the house my parents currently lived in. That's a detail I need to clarify. 10 years ago, my parents sold their own house to invest in a business venture that went nowhere. Grandma Eleanor, being the saint she was, let them move into her home. She moved into the in-law suite on the first floor, giving them the run of the main house. They had lived there rent-free for a decade, acting like they owned the manor, hosting parties, and treating Grandma like a lodger in her own home. I pulled into the driveway. My parents' cars were gone, probably at work. Megan's car was gone too. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the foyer. It smelled of lemon polish and old wood, the scent of my childhood. I walked past the dining room and turned toward the formal living room. That was where the piano stood. It took up the entire corner by the bay window, a majestic black beast that anchored the room. I turned the corner and froze. The room was empty. I blinked, thinking maybe I was in the wrong room, maybe the stress was making me hallucinate. But no. The bay window was there. The fireplace was there. But in the corner, where the Steinway had stood for 50 years, there was nothing. Just 3 deep indentations in the carpet where the heavy brass legs had rested. And a void. A massive, silent void. My heart hammered against my ribs. I ran to the spot, dropping my bag. I touched the indentations in the rug. They were still fresh. No, I whispered. No, no, no. Panic rose in my throat. Had they been robbed? But who steals a 1,000-pound piano without taking the silver candlesticks on the mantel or the TV? I pulled out my phone and called my mother. It went to voicemail. I called my father. Voicemail. I ran upstairs to check the rest of the house. Nothing else seemed missing. But then I looked out the window of the master bedroom, down into the driveway. I hadn't noticed it when I pulled in because I was so focused on getting inside. But there, parked on the far side of the garage, hidden slightly by the hedges, was a car I didn't recognize. It was white. Gleaming pearlescent white. A brand new Porsche Panamera. And on the hood, sitting there like a drop of blood on snow, was a massive red bow. A sick feeling twisted in my gut. A realization so horrifying I didn't want to let it form words in my mind. $95,000. That's what a restored 1892 Steinway Model B could go for. I looked at the car. I looked at the empty space in the living room. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I felt a cold, hard rage settle over me. It was a feeling I had never felt before. For 28 years, I had been the quiet one. The one who stepped back. The one who apologized for taking up space. But looking at that car, knowing it was bought with the bones of my grandmother's legacy, something in me snapped. I dialed my father again. This time, I didn't stop calling until he picked up. Mia, I am in a meeting, my father's voice barked through the phone, impatient and dismissive. Where is the piano? I asked. My voice was deadly calm. There was a pause on the other end. A silence that lasted 2 seconds too long. We'll talk about this later. We will talk about this now, Richard, I said, using his first name for the first time in my life. I am standing in Grandma's living room. Where is the piano? Don't take that tone with me, he snapped. Come to the house tonight. We're having a family dinner. We'll discuss it then. Click. He hung up. I stood there in the silence of the empty room, the ghost of the piano haunting me. To understand why this theft broke me, you have to understand what that instrument meant. It wasn't just wood and wire. Growing up, I was always the other daughter. Megan was born 4 years after me, and from the moment she arrived, she was the son my parents orbited. She was loud, demanding, and pretty in a way my mother valued, blonde, blue-eyed, bubbly. I was dark-haired, quiet, and introspective. My parents, obsessed with image and social climbing, didn't know what to do with a shy, bookish child. But Grandma Eleanor did. When I was 6, I was sitting on the piano bench while Grandma played a nocturne. She stopped and placed my small hand on the keys. You have a listener's soul, Mia, she had told me. Most people hear noise. You hear the story. That piano became my voice. When my parents forgot to pick me up from school because they were taking Megan to a modeling audition, I would come home, sit at the keys, and play out my loneliness. When they missed my high school graduation to go to a networking gala in the Hamptons, I played Rachmaninoff until my fingers ached, turning my anger into a storm of sound. The piano was the only place I was visible. It was the only place I was worthy. I remember one Christmas when I was 16. I had just won the state championship for classical piano. It was a huge deal, a scholarship, a trophy, recognition from the governor. I brought the trophy home, beaming, waiting for my father to finally look at me with pride. He glanced at it while mixing a drink. "That's nice, honey. Does this mean you can play actual songs now? Like Christmas carols for the party?" 5 minutes later, Megan walked in. She was 12. She had successfully made the junior cheerleading squad on the B team. My mother shrieked with delight. "Oh, my star. Richard, look. Our little cheerleader." They took us out to dinner to celebrate. To celebrate Megan. My trophy sat on the kitchen counter, next to the mail, ignored. That night, Grandma Eleanor found me crying in the dark living room. She didn't say a word. She just sat next to me on the bench and played a duet. We played together for an hour, our shoulders touching. "They are blind, Mia," she whispered into the darkness. "But you are luminous. Never let them dim you." Now, 12 years later, they hadn't just ignored my light. They had stolen the source of it. I walked over to the spot where the piano used to be. I laid down on the carpet, curling my body into the empty space. I closed my eyes and tried to hear the music, but all I could hear was the silence of betrayal. I remembered something else, too. A memory from 3 months ago. I had come over early to drop off groceries for Grandma. My parents didn't know I was there. I was in the kitchen, putting away milk, when I heard my father's voice from his office down the hall. He was shouting. "I need more time. You can't call the loan yet." Pause. "I know the collateral isn't sufficient, but the merger is happening in 2 months. The Harrison deal will cover everything." I had frozen. My father always projected an image of immense wealth. The country club memberships, the designer suits, the leased luxury cars. But deep down, I always suspected it was a house of cards. "I can't liquidate the house, you idiot, it's in A." He lowered his voice, mumbling something I couldn't catch. "Look, I'll find the cash. I have assets. Just give me 90 days. I had slipped out the back door, pretending I had just arrived. When I saw him later, he was all smiles, bragging about a new golf club membership. I convinced myself I had misheard, or that it was just normal business stress. But now, staring at the empty corner, the pieces clicked into place. The desperation. The need to impress the Harrisons. The sudden infusion of cash to buy a Porsche. They had sacrificed the one thing that mattered to me to save their own skins. I got up, brushed the carpet fibers off my dress, and walked out the door. I got into my rusted sedan and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I drove to my parents' family dinner. When I pulled up, the house was blazing with lights. And there it was, in the center of the driveway, bathed in the floodlights like an idol on an altar, the Porsche. It was obscene. It was a beautiful machine, yes, but to me, it looked like a coffin. A white, metal coffin where my grandmother's legacy had been buried. I parked my car behind it, blocking it in. I wanted them to see the contrast. My battered Ford next to their stolen glory. I took a deep breath. This was it. I had spent 28 years biting my tongue. I had spent 28 years trying to be the good daughter, the easy one, the peacekeeper. But the peacekeeper was dead. The girl who played in the dark was gone. I walked up the steps, didn't bother knocking, and pushed open the front door. Laughter floated out from the dining room. The clinking of crystal glasses. The smell of expensive roast beef. They were celebrating. I walked into the dining room. My father was at the head of the table, holding a glass of wine. My mother was beaming. Megan was practically vibrating with excitement, holding a key fob in her hand. They stopped when they saw me. Not because I looked scary, but because I looked done. "Mia," my mother chirped, though her eyes were wary. "You're late. Sit down, we're just toasting Megan's new." "I saw it," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a discordant note. "It's parked in the driveway." Isn't it amazing? Megan squealed. A Panamera. Daddy said I need to make the right impression on the Harrisons at the party. Daniel is going to freak out. It's beautiful, I said, walking closer to the table. It must have cost a fortune. Around $95,000. My father put his glass down. The smile vanished from his face. Mia, sit down. Where did you get the money, Dad? I asked, staying standing. I know business has been tight. I heard you on the phone. So where did you find 95 grand lying around? Investments, my mother said quickly. Your father made some smart moves. Did he? I looked at my father. Or did he sell the only thing in this house that had a soul? Silence. The kind of silence that screams. You sold the Steinway, I said. It wasn't a question. Megan rolled her eyes. Oh my God, here we go. The drama queen. That piano was mine, I said, my voice rising. Grandma left it to me. She told you. You knew. Grandma is dying, Mia. My father slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. She doesn't need a piano. She's in a hospice bed. And you? What do you need a concert grand for? You live in a studio apartment the size of a shoebox. You can't even fit it in there. It was my inheritance, I said, shaking. It was the one thing she wanted me to have. And Megan needs a future, my mother interjected, standing up to defend her golden child. Daniel Harrison is a catch. If she marries him, our family is set for life. She needs to look the part. She can't drive around in that tin can she had before. We made a strategic decision for the good of this family. The good of the family? I laughed, a bitter, jagged sound. You mean the good of you. You sold my inheritance to buy a prop for your social climbing. Don't be jealous, Anna, Megan sneered, twirling the Porsche key on her finger. It's not a good look. Maybe if you had a real job or a boyfriend, Mom and Dad would invest in you, too. But let's be honest, you're just the music teacher. I looked at my sister. I saw the hollowness in her. She was 24, drowning in debt she hid from her friends, desperate to marry a man who treated her like an accessory, driving a car she couldn't afford to put gas in. I'm not jealous, Megan, I said softly. I'm disgusted. I turned to my father. Who did you sell it to? I want the name of the buyer. I'm going to get it back. It's gone, my father said coldly. Shipped to a collector in Tokyo this morning. You can't get it back. The money is spent. The car is bought. It's done. My knees felt weak. Tokyo. It was really gone. I'm going to tell her, I said. The realization hit me as I said it. I'm going to the hospice right now, and I'm going to tell Grandma what you did. My mother moved faster than I thought possible. She rounded the table and grabbed my arm. Her nails dug into my skin. You will do no such thing, she hissed. Her face was inches from mine, contorted into a mask of pure malice. She is on her deathbed, Mia. Her heart is failing. If you go in there and cause a scene, if you upset her with this petty nonsense, and her heart gives out, you will be responsible. She squeezed harder. Do you hear me? If she dies because you couldn't keep your mouth shut, you are killing her. You will be the one who killed your grandmother. I looked at my mother. I looked at the fear behind the anger in her eyes. She wasn't protecting Grandma. She was protecting herself. She was terrified of what Eleanor would do if she knew. Let go of me, I said quietly. She shoved my arm away. Go home, Mia. Grow up. Be a team player for once in your life. I walked out of the house. I walked past the white Porsche. I got into my car and drove. I didn't go home. I drove to the Hospice center parking lot. I sat there in the dark, the rain drumming on the roof, staring at the lit window of room 304. My mother's words echoed in my head. You will be the one who killed her. Could I do it? Could I drop this bomb on a dying woman? Was it selfish to tell her, just to clear my own conscience? Or was it more selfish to let her die thinking her son was a good man? I sat there for hours, wrestling with the ghost of my family's expectations. But then I remembered Grandma's voice. Truth is the only music worth playing. I started the engine but then turned it off. I wouldn't go in tonight. I needed to compose myself. I needed to be strong. Tomorrow the music would stop and the truth would begin. That night was the longest of my life. I paced my small apartment, the silence deafening without a piano to fill it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the empty corner in the living room, and the smirk on Megan's face. Don't be jealous, Anna. It wasn't jealousy. It was grief. And it was clarity. For years, I had made excuses for them. Dad is just stressed about the business. Mom just wants us to be successful. Megan is just young. I had swallowed the insults, the neglect, the blatant favoritism, telling myself that keeping the peace was the noble thing to do. But peace purchased with lies isn't peace. It's submission. By 6 a.m., I had made my decision. Grandma Eleanor was the strongest woman I knew. She had buried a husband, survived cancer twice, and navigated the shark tank of Philadelphia high society for 50 years. Treating her like a fragile flower who couldn't handle the truth was the ultimate insult. She deserved to know who her family really was. I showered, dressed in my most professional clothes, a black blazer and slacks, and drove to the hospice. When I arrived, Grandma was awake. She was propped up on pillows, watching a cardinal peck at the bird feeder outside her window. She looked frail, her skin translucent like parchment paper, but her eyes were alert. You're early, she said, her voice a dry rasp. She turned to me, and her smile faded instantly. Mia. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I pulled the chair up to the bed. I didn't take her hand this time. I needed to stand on my own 2 feet for this. Grandma, I started, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. I need to tell you something. And it's going to hurt. Mom told me that if I told you, I'd be responsible if something happened to you. But I can't lie to you. I won't. Grandma Eleanor shifted, sitting up straighter. The weakness seemed to evaporate, replaced by a steely focus. Diane threatened you? Yes. Then it must be serious. Tell me. I went to the house yesterday, I said. The Steinway is gone. She didn't blink. She didn't gasp. She just watched me, her gaze intense. Dad sold it, I continued, the words tumbling out now. He sold it to a collector in Japan for $95,000. He used the money to buy Megan a Porsche. A white Panamera. He said Megan needed to make the right impression on the Harrisons at the party. He said the piano was just furniture. I braced myself for her collapse. I waited for the monitors to start beeping wildly. I waited for the heartbreak. Instead, Grandma Eleanor let out a long, slow exhale. She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them, they weren't filled with tears. They were filled with ice. The Porsche, she said softly. Of course. Because James Harrison likes German engineering. Grandma, I'm so sorry, I sobbed, finally breaking down. I tried to stop them. I tried, stop, she commanded. It wasn't harsh, but it was firm. She reached out and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Mia, look at me. This is not your fault. You did not sell my legacy. You did not betray me. She took a breath, her chest rattling slightly. I knew Richard was desperate. I knew the business was failing. I've been paying his mortgage for 10 years, though he thinks I don't know he hasn't made a payment since 2016. My jaw dropped. What? But to sell the piano. Her face hardened. That was the line. That was the test. And he failed it. She reached for the call button on her bed rail, but not for the nurse. She pointed to her bedside table. Mia, hand me my phone. And get my reading glasses. I handed them to her. She put the glasses on, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. She dialed a number from memory. She put it on speaker. Harold Jennings, a deep, gravelly voice answered. Harold, Grandma said. Her voice was no longer the voice of a dying woman. It was the voice of the matriarch, who had run the Whitmore family for decades. It's Eleanor. It's time. Eleanor. The lawyer's voice shifted, instantly alert. Is everything all right? Is it the heart? The heart is failing, Harold, but the mind is crystal clear, she said. Richard sold the Steinway. He bought a sports car for the girl. A pause. Then, a heavy sigh from the other end. I'm sorry, Eleanor. I hoped you were wrong about him. Hope is a luxury we can no longer afford, she said. Bring the red folder. And the updated codicil. Come to the hospice now. We have work to do before the party. I'm on my way, Harold said. Grandma hung up and looked at me. Mia, wipe your face. We are not victims here. We are Whitmores. What's happening? I asked. Who is Harold? What red folder? Harold has been my personal attorney for 30 years, she said. Your father uses the family firm downtown. He thinks Harold is just a senile old man I play bridge with. He's wrong. She gestured for me to pour her some water. 5 years ago, when Richard asked to borrow the deed to the house to secure a business loan, I told him no. He got angry. He threw a vase against the wall. That was the day I realized my son loved my money more than he loved me. I listened, stunned. I remembered that vase breaking. Mom had told me the cat knocked it over. So I created a failsafe, Grandma continued. A trust. And a condition. I told Harold, if Richard ever sells an asset of mine without my permission while I am incapacitated, pull the trigger. What trigger? I asked. She smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a general watching the enemy walk into a trap. You'll see at the party. Now, listen to me carefully, Mia. This is important. I'm listening. You are going to that birthday party on Saturday. You are going to wear the navy blue silk dress I bought you last year, the one that makes you look like a CEO, not a music teacher. You are going to hold your head up. You are not going to say a word about the piano. You are going to let them gloat. Can you do that? I don't know if I can stand there and watch them, I admitted. You can, she said fiercely. Because you are not just watching. You are witnessing. You are the evidence. And when the time comes, I need you to be ready to accept what is yours. An hour later, Harold Jennings arrived. He was a man in his late 60s, wearing a tweed suit that looked like it belonged in a library. He carried a battered leather briefcase. He looked at me with kind eyes. Mia. I haven't seen you since you were 12. You look just like Eleanor did at your age. Hello, Mr. Jennings, I said. Call me Harold. He turned to Grandma. I have the papers. The breach of trust is undeniable. The sale of the piano constitutes unauthorized liquidation of estate assets. It activates the clause. Do it, Grandma said. She signed the papers he laid out on the tray table. Her hand was shaky, but her signature was bold. Then Harold turned to me. Mia, there are things you need to know before Saturday. Things about your parents' situation. He opened the folder. Your parents, Harold began, have led you to believe they are wealthy. They are not. They are technically insolvent. The business has been in the red for 3 years. The only reason they haven't declared bankruptcy is because Eleanor has been silently covering their losses. And the house? I asked. Grandma mentioned the deed. Harold pulled out a document. It was a property deed. Your parents tell everyone they own the manor. They do not. The deed is and remains in the name of Eleanor Whitmore. They are tenants. Guests. My head was spinning. Everything, the country clubs, the parties, the arrogance, it was all a lie. They were living on Grandma's charity while treating her like a burden. And Harold continued, looking me dead in the eye, the clause that Eleanor just activated changes everything. Because Richard sold the piano, a specific item named in the trust, he has violated the terms of his tenancy and his inheritance. He slid a final paper toward me. As of this signature, Harold tapped the paper Grandma had just signed, the entire estate, the house, the accounts, the remaining assets, and the rights to recover stolen property, bypasses Richard and Diane entirely. He looked at me. It all goes to the sole beneficiary. You, Mia. I stared at the paper. Me? You, Grandma said from the bed. Not because I want to punish them, Mia. But because you are the only one who will protect it. You are the only one who understands that value isn't just a number on a check. But they're my parents, I whispered. This will destroy them. They destroyed themselves, Grandma said. We are just turning on the lights. The 3 days leading up to the party were a blur of surreal tension. I went to work. I taught scales to clumsy fingers. I bought groceries. I did my laundry. Normal things. But underneath it all, I felt like I was carrying a grenade in my pocket. My phone blew up with texts from the family group chat, which I was usually excluded from. Mom, reminder. Party starts at 6 p.m. sharp on Saturday. Guests arriving at 6:30. Dress code is formal. Megan, photo of the Porsche key, just got a custom keychain. So excited for Daniel to see it. Dad, Mia, don't be late. And fix your hair. We have photographers coming. I didn't reply to any of them. I just saved the screenshots. Harold had told me to document everything. I visited Grandma every evening. She was getting weaker physically, her breathing was more labored, and she slept more, but her spirit was incandescent. She was holding on. She was waiting for Saturday. Is everything ready? She asked me on Friday night. Harold has the paperwork, I said, smoothing her blanket. He's coming with Aunt Margaret. Aunt Margaret was Grandma's younger sister. She was the black sheep of the family because she had married a mechanic and lived a modest, happy life in New Jersey. My parents hated her. They called her common. But she was the only other person in the family with a spine. Good, Grandma whispered. Margaret always did love a good show. Grandma, I asked, holding her hand. Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. They will hate me. She opened her eyes and looked at me with such intense love it almost broke me. They already resent you, Mia. Because you are whole, and they are empty. Let them hate. You will be free. And you will have the house. You can fill it with music again. I just want you to be okay, I said. I will be, she said. Now go. Get your beauty sleep. You have a battle to win tomorrow. Saturday arrived with a sky the color of bruised iron. It was humid and heavy. I spent an hour getting ready. I put on the navy blue silk dress Grandma had bought me. It fit perfectly, hugging my frame and giving me a silhouette of strength I didn't know I had. I pulled my dark hair back into a severe, elegant chignon. I put on pearl earrings, real ones, a gift from Grandma for my 21st birthday. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like Mia the pushover piano teacher. I looked like Mia Whitmore. I drove to the house. The driveway was already filling up with luxury cars. Mercedes, BMWs, Lexuses. And right in the front, shining under the porch lights, was the white Porsche Panamera. I parked my Ford down the street, around the corner. I didn't want to mar their perfect picture. Not yet. Walking up the driveway, I could hear the jazz band playing in the backyard. My parents had gone all out. Caterers were passing trays of champagne. The house was decorated with thousands of dollars worth of white lilies. I walked in. The foyer was crowded. Mia. Aunt Margaret appeared out of the crowd. She was wearing a sensible floral dress and a look of grim determination. She hugged me tight. "You look beautiful, honey. Like armor." "Where's Harold?" I whispered. "He's in the study, waiting for the signal," she murmured. "He's reviewing the file one last time." We walked into the main living room. The party was in full swing. My mother was holding court in a red sequin gown that looked a bit too tight. She was laughing loudly at something James Harrison was saying. James Harrison, Daniel's father, was a man who looked like he was carved out of granite and money. He was holding a scotch, looking around the room with an appraising eye. My father was standing next to him, looking sweaty but triumphant. "And this," my father was saying, gesturing to the room, "is the legacy I've built. We've put a lot of work into maintaining the historic integrity of the estate. It's a fine property, Richard." James nodded. "Daniel tells me you're quite generous with the girls, too. The car is impressive." "Oh, family comes first," my father beamed. "We wanted Megan to have the best. Safety and style, you know." I felt bile rise in my throat. Megan and Daniel were by the fireplace, or rather, by the empty spot where the piano used to be. My parents had placed a large, awkward fern there to cover the dents in the carpet, but the void was still palpable to me. Megan was clinging to Daniel's arm. Daniel looked bored, checking his phone. "There's the sister," Daniel said, spotting me. He didn't smile. "Hi Mia," Megan waved, her other hand clutching a glass of champagne. "You actually look decent. Did you rent that dress?" "Grandma bought it for me," I said evenly. "Hello, Daniel." "Hey," Daniel grunted. "Where is Eleanor?" James Harrison asked, turning to my father. I expected to pay my respects to the matriarch. "Oh, Mother is resting," my mother interjected smoothly, stepping in. "She's at a specialized facility. Her mind, you know." She tapped her temple sadly. "It's wandering. She wouldn't recognize anyone here. It's better this way." "Liar." "I see," James said. "A pity." But my father raised his voice, dinging a spoon against his glass. The room quieted down. If I could have everyone's attention. The jazz band stopped playing. The guests turned toward the fireplace. "Welcome, everyone, to Diane's 60th. My father announced. Applause rippled through the room. "Tonight is about celebration. About family. About the future." He put an arm around Megan. "As many of you know, our daughter Megan has been a shining light in our lives. And with her relationship with Daniel blossoming," he nodded to Daniel, who looked uncomfortable, "we wanted to make sure she entered this new chapter of her life with the proper status. That is why, with the blessing of her grandmother, Eleanor, we were able to gift her the beautiful car you saw outside." More applause. Megan did a little curtsy. "Grandma Eleanor," my father continued, lying through his teeth with a smile that practiced for years, decided that her old piano was just gathering dust. She wanted to turn the past into the future. She insisted we sell it to fund Megan's happiness. That is the kind of generosity this family is built on. That, a voice rang out from the back of the room, sharp and clear, is a lie. The silence that followed was absolute. Everyone turned. Aunt Margaret stood there. And beside her, stepping out of the shadows of the hallway, was Harold Jennings. He held a thick red folder in his hand. "Margaret?" My mother laughed nervously. "Have you had too much punch?" "You didn't ask Eleanor," Margaret said, her voice shaking with rage. "You stole it." "Security," my father called out, looking around for the hired catering staff. "Please escort my sister-in-law out. She's clearly emotional." "I wouldn't do that, Richard," Harold Jennings said. His voice was deep, commanding, and projected to every corner of the room. He walked into the center of the circle, placing his briefcase on the coffee table. "Who are you?" James Harrison asked, eyes narrowing. "My name is Harold Jennings," he said. "I am Eleanor Whitmore's attorney. And I am here to execute her instructions." My father went pale. "Mother has an attorney. She's senile. She can't instruct anyone." "On the contrary," Harold said, opening the red folder. "I have a distinct video affidavit recorded 3 days ago, certified by her doctors. She is perfectly lucid. Unlike you, Richard." The air in the room grew heavy. The guests, neighbors, business partners, socialites, sensed blood in the water. They leaned in. I stood by the wall, my heart pounding in my throat. I looked at the fern covering the piano's grave. "It's time," I thought. "Play on." Harold Jennings didn't just command the room, he dismantled it. He stood next to the potted fern, using the empty space where the piano had been as his stage. "This is ridiculous," my mother hissed, her face flushing a blotchy red that clashed with her sequined dress. "This is a private party. You are trespassing." "Actually, Mrs. Thompson," Harold said, pulling a document from the folder, "that brings me to my first point. Trespassing." He held up the document. The paper was cream-colored, official, with a seal that caught the light. For 10 years, Harold addressed the room, though his eyes were locked on my father. "Richard and Diane Thompson have lived in this house. They have hosted parties here. They have leveraged this address to secure loans. They have led every person in this room to believe that they own the Whitmore Manor." My father opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish on a dock. "However," Harold continued, his voice dropping an octave, "this is the deed. The sole owner of this property is Eleanor Whitmore. There is no co-ownership. There is no transfer. Richard and Diane are, legally speaking, guests. Tenants at will. Who have not paid rent in a decade." A collective gasp ripped through the room. I saw Mrs. Gable, the head of the PTA, whisper something to her husband. James Harrison took a step away from my father, creating a physical distance that spoke volumes. That's a technicality," my father stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "Mother gave us the house. We just never did the paperwork to save on taxes." "False," Harold said. "She allowed you to stay because you were family. But that privilege came with conditions. Specifically, the preservation of the estate's assets." Harold pulled out a second document. This one had a red tab. "Which brings us to the matter of the Steinway piano." Megan, who had been standing frozen with her champagne glass halfway to her mouth, suddenly looked terrified. "What about my car?" she squeaked. Harold ignored her. 3 days ago, Richard Thompson sold a 1892 Steinway Model B belonging to Eleanor Whitmore for $95,000. He did this without her permission, while she was in hospice care, and misappropriated the funds for personal use. "She said I could," my father shouted, desperation making his voice crack. "She told me to take care of the family." "We have her statement, Richard," Harold said calmly. "She did not." Harold turned to the guests. "This act constitutes elder financial abuse and grand larceny. But Eleanor, in her mercy, has decided not to press criminal charges yet." My mother let out a breath, thinking she was off the hook. Instead, Harold said, she has triggered the bad actor clause in her living trust. He picked up the final document. It was thick. 5 years ago, Eleanor established a trust. The terms were simple: if her son, Richard, ever attempted to sell, mortgage, or damage the core assets of the estate, specifically the house or the piano, he would be immediately disinherited. Harold looked at my father. You sold the piano, Richard. You pulled the trigger. So what does that mean? Megan asked, her voice trembling. It means, Harold said, turning his gaze toward me for the first time, that as of this morning, the ownership of this house, the remaining contents, the investment accounts, and the authority to recover stolen assets, has been transferred to the sole remaining beneficiary. Harold pointed at me. Mia Thompson. The silence was deafening. 30 pairs of eyes swiveled to me. I stepped forward. My legs felt like jelly, but I kept my back straight. I remembered Grandma's words, "You are the evidence." Mia. My mother looked at me like I was an alien. You knew about this. You did this. I didn't do it, Mom, I said, my voice steady. You did. When you sold the piano. You little traitor. My mother lunged toward me, her hand raised to slap me. Diane. James Harrison's voice cracked like a whip. My mother froze. James Harrison walked into the center of the circle. He didn't look at my parents. He looked at Harold. Sir, James said to the lawyer. Are you saying that the collateral Richard pledged for our joint venture, this property, was never his to pledge? That is correct, Mr. Harrison, Harold said. Any lien placed on this house by Richard Thompson is fraudulent and void. James Harrison turned to my father. The look on his face was terrifying. It wasn't anger, it was cold business calculation. Richard, James said quietly. Our deal is dead. My lawyers will be in touch about the breach of contract and the fraud. Don't call me. James, wait. My father grabbed his arm. It's a misunderstanding. I can explain. The piano money, James shook him off like a piece of lint. Come, Daniel. Daniel Harrison, the love of Megan's life, didn't hesitate. He unhooked Megan's arm from his, set his champagne glass down on a waiter's tray, and walked to his father. Daniel. Megan whispered. Wait, my car, we can go for a drive. I don't think so, Megan, Daniel said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I don't date frauds. And just like that, the Harrisons walked out the front door. The spell broke. The guests began to scatter. No one wanted to be part of the disaster. They muttered quick apologies, grabbed their coats and fled. Within 5 minutes, the party was over. Only the family, Aunt Margaret, and Harold remained. My father sank onto the sofa, my sofa, technically. He put his head in his hands. You ruined everything, he whispered. Everything. The money, Harold said, cutting through the pity party. The $95,000. It belongs to the trust. It belongs to Mia. It's gone. Megan screamed, tears streaming down her face, ruining her spray tan. We bought the car. It's mine. It is an asset purchased with stolen funds, Harold said. You have 30 days to return the $95,000 to the estate. If you do not, I will file a civil suit for theft and attach your wages for the next 20 years. We can't return it. My mother shrieked. The dealer won't take it back for the full price. It's used now. Then I suggest you sell it for whatever you can get and find the rest of the money elsewhere, Harold said coldly. Maybe you have some jewelry you can liquidate, Diane. My mother clutched her diamond necklace, probably fake, I realized now, and looked at me with pure hatred. You settle this, Mia, she demanded. Tell him to stop. We are your parents. You can't kick us out. You can't take Megan's car. I looked at them. I looked at the fern where the piano should be. I'm not taking the car, I said. You are selling it. Because you owe the trust a debt. And the house, my father looked up, his eyes red. Are you going to throw us on the street? Your own father. I took a deep breath. I had thought about this. I wanted to hurt them. I wanted to scream, get out. But I wasn't them. No, I said. I'm not throwing you out tonight. Relief washed over their faces. But I continued, things are going to change. Harold has prepared a lease agreement. A lease? My mother blinked. Yes. A 12-month lease, I said. You will pay rent. Market rate. The money will go into an account for Grandma's care, and eventually, the maintenance of this house. Rent? My father sputtered. I can't pay rent. I'm broke. Then you better get a job, Dad, I said. A real one. Maybe you can sell the golf clubs. And after 12 months? Megan asked, wiping her nose. After 12 months, I said, the lease expires. And you will move out. Because I am moving in. You? Megan laughed, a hysterical sound. You're going to live here alone. With your cats and your sheet music. No, I said. I'm going to live here with my piano. I'm going to use the money you return to me to buy a new one. And I'm going to open a music school here. In this living room. You can't, my mother whispered. It's my house, I said. I can do whatever I want. Harold stepped forward and handed the papers to my father. Sign the acknowledgement of debt and the lease agreement. Or vacate the premises within 48 hours. Your choice. My father looked at the papers. He looked at the door where James Harrison had left. He looked at the empty champagne glasses. He picked up a pen. His hand shook, but he signed. I watched him sign away his delusions of grandeur. The silence after the door closed on Harold and Aunt Margaret was heavy, suffocating. My parents and Megan sat in the wreckage of the party, half-eaten canapes, wilted lilies, and the shattered remains of their ego. Are you happy now? Megan asked. She was curled up in the armchair, mascara running down her cheeks. Daniel is gone. My life is over. I hope you're satisfied. I looked at her. Really looked at her. For the first time, I didn't see the golden child. I saw a girl who had been raised to be useless. She had no skills, no grit, no concept of reality. She was a victim of my parents' parenting just as much as I was, just in a different way. I'm not happy, Megan, I said tiredly. I am exhausted. And Daniel? If he left you because your dad lost a deal, he didn't love you. He loved the Porsche. Shut up, she screamed, throwing a throw pillow at me. It landed harmlessly at my feet. Mia, my mother said. Her voice had changed. The aggression was gone, replaced by a wheedling, manipulative tone I recognized. Listen, honey. We can fix this. You can tell Harold you changed your mind. We can keep the car, refinish the mortgage. If we stick together, we can get James back. She reached out to touch my arm. We're family. You don't want to destroy the family, do you? I stepped back. The family didn't break today, Mom. It broke when you sold the piano. Today is just the cleanup. I did it for you, my father shouted suddenly, standing up. I wanted you girls to have everything. I wanted you to be proud of me. I would have been proud of you if you were honest, Dad, I said. I didn't need a mansion. I didn't need country clubs. I just needed a dad who didn't steal from his own mother. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. He sank back down, defeated. I'm going to Grandma's, I said. Don't wait up. I walked out. I walked past the Porsche Panamera. It looked sad now, sitting in the dark, a symbol of a debt that would take years to pay off. I drove back to the hospice. It was late, past visiting hours, but the nurses knew me. When I walked into room 304, Grandma was asleep. But she woke up when I sat down. "Did you do it?" she whispered. "I did," I said. "It's over." They signed. "And the Harrisons?" "Gone." Grandma let out a small, satisfied chuckle. "Good. Never liked that man. He cheats at cards." She reached for my hand. "How do you feel?" "Sad," I admitted. "And light. Like I put down a heavy backpack I've been carrying for 20 years. "That is freedom, Mia," she said. "It feels scary at first. But you'll get used to it." That was the last real conversation we had. Grandma Eleanor slipped into a coma the next day. She passed away 3 days later, peacefully, with the window open so she could hear the birds. The funeral was awkward, to say the least. My parents stood in the back, wearing dark glasses, avoiding eye contact with the neighbors who now knew the truth. Megan sat in the car the whole time, refusing to come out. I played the service on the church's upright piano. It wasn't a Steinway, but it had soul. I played Claire de Lune. I played it for Eleanor. In the weeks that followed, the reality of the new arrangement set in. My father tried to sell the Porsche back to the dealer, but as my mother had predicted, the value had dropped the moment it drove off the lot. They got $75,000 for it. They had to scramble to come up with the remaining $20,000 to repay the trust. I heard my mother sold her collection of designer handbags, and my father sold his Rolex. It was humiliating for them. But they paid. Living in the house with them for those first 2 months was excruciating. They moved like ghosts, avoiding me. My father stopped wearing suits and started sitting in the den in his bathrobe, staring at the wall. My mother stopped going to the club. They couldn't handle the power dynamic. They couldn't handle living under a roof owned by the daughter they had marginalized. 60 days after the funeral, my father knocked on my bedroom door. "We're leaving," he said. He didn't look at me. "The lease is for a year, Dad," I said. "You can stay." "We can't," he said. "I can't look at you. Every time I see you, I see." He didn't finish the sentence. He saw his failure. "Where will you go?" I asked. "We found a condo," he said. 2 bedrooms. In the city. It's smaller." They moved out the next weekend. It was a quiet affair. No movers. Just boxes in the back of my mother's SUV. When the last box was gone, I stood in the living room. It was empty. The furniture was theirs, so they took it. The house echoed. But it didn't feel empty. It felt full. It felt like mine. I walked to the corner with the indentations in the carpet. I sat down on the floor. "Okay, Grandma," I whispered. "What now?" I used the money repaid to the trust to buy a new piano. I didn't try to replace the 1892 Steinway. You can't replace history. Instead, I bought a Yamaha C7 Grand. It was bright, modern, and powerful. A new sound for a new chapter. I started my music school. I called it the Eleanor School of Music. At first, it was just a few neighborhood kids. But word spread. Not about the scandal, though that helped with name recognition, but about the teacher who taught kids to feel the music, not just read it. 6 months passed. I hadn't heard from Megan. I knew she was living with a friend, working as a receptionist at a dental office. My mother told me that on the rare occasion we texted. Then, one rainy Tuesday, my doorbell rang. I opened it to see Megan standing on the porch. She was wet. She wasn't wearing designer clothes. She was wearing jeans and a hoodie. She looked tired. "Hi," she said. "Hi," I said. "Did you walk here?" "Where's your, never mind." "I took the bus," she said. She looked at her feet. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked into the living room and saw the new piano. She stopped. "It's nice," she said. "It's loud," I smiled. Megan turned to me. Her eyes were rimmed with red. "I'm sorry, Mia." I waited. "I'm sorry I was a brat," she said, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry I took the car. I'm sorry I never stood up for you." She took a shaky breath. "I'm in therapy. Dr. Evans, she says I have golden child syndrome. Says I was set up to fail because I never had to earn anything. I hate my job. I hate taking the bus. But I bought my own groceries yesterday. With my own money." She looked up at me, a flicker of pride in her eyes. It felt good. I felt a lump in my throat. This was the first real thing Megan had ever said to me. "I'm proud of you, Megan," I said. And I meant it. "I miss Grandma," she whispered. "Me too." Do you think I could listen to you play?" she asked. "Just for a minute." I sat down at the Yamaha. I thought about what to play. I chose a piece by Debussy. Complex, stormy, but resolving into a beautiful, quiet piece. As I played, I watched my sister out of the corner of my eye. She closed her eyes, leaning her head back against the wall. For the first time, she wasn't listening to the noise. She was hearing the story. Spring arrived in Philadelphia not with a whisper but with a symphony. The dogwood trees lining the driveway of the manor exploded into white and pink blossoms, and the azaleas Grandma Eleanor had planted 50 years ago woke up from their winter slumber. For the first time in a decade, the house didn't feel like a museum, or a stage set for my parents' social ambitions. It felt like a living, breathing thing. It had been 6 months since Grandma passed, and 4 months since my parents moved into their 2-bedroom condo across town. The silence they left behind wasn't empty, it was pregnant with possibility. I spent those first few months of true ownership doing something my mother would have considered a waste of time. I got my hands dirty. I spent my weekends in the garden, pulling up the weeds that had been hiding behind the manicured hedges. It was therapeutic. Yanking out the invasive ivy felt a lot like what I had done with my family dynamics, painful, messy, but necessary for the sunlight to get through. My music school, the Eleanor School of Music, was flourishing. It turned out that the scandal of the birthday party had a strange side effect. People were curious. But they stayed because of the music. I wasn't just the girl who inherited the house, I was the teacher who could get a distracted 8-year-old to fall in love with Bach. One Tuesday afternoon, I was finishing a lesson with Sophie, Aunt Margaret's granddaughter. She was 10, with knobby knees and a fierce determination that reminded me of myself at that age. We were working on a simplified version of a Chopin prelude. "I keep messing up the crossover," Sophie groaned, slamming her hands onto the keys of the Yamaha. "You're not messing it up," I said, sitting beside her. "You're rushing. You're trying to get to the end of the song before you've enjoyed the middle. Listen." I played the measure for her, slowing it down, letting the notes breathe. "Music isn't a race, Sophie. It's a conversation. You have to let the notes speak to each other." She tried again, slower this time. The melody sang. That, Aunt Margaret said from the doorway, holding a tray of lemonade, sounded exactly like Eleanor. I looked up and smiled. Aunt Margaret came over often now. She had become the grandmother figure I lost, filling the kitchen with the smell of baking bread and easy laughter, sounds that had been banned when my mother ran the house because crumbs were the enemy. "How are they?" Margaret asked later, as we sat on the back porch watching Sophie chase fireflies in the twilight. She didn't have to specify who they were. "I went to dinner there last Sunday," I admitted, swirling the ice in my glass. "It was stifling. The condo. The atmosphere, I said. The visit to my parents' new reality had been a surreal experience. Their condo was in a decent complex, but it was a far cry from the manor. It was beige, compact, and smelled faintly of someone else's cooking from the hallway. When I walked in, the first thing I noticed was how crowded it felt. My parents had tried to cram their oversized furniture into the small living room. The massive Louis XIV-style sofa that used to dominate the manor's drawing room was now shoved against a wall, blocking half the sliding glass door to the balcony. It looked ridiculous, a king's throne in a cubicle. My father was sitting in his recliner, watching the Golf Channel. He didn't get up when I entered. He looked older. Defeated. The arrogance that had fueled him for decades seemed to have evaporated, leaving behind a bitter husk. "Hello, Dad," I had said. "Mia," he grunted, not taking his eyes off the screen. "You're late." "I'm on time, Dad." 6 p.m. My mother was in the kitchenette. That was the only word for it. It wasn't a kitchen, it was a kitchenette. She was trying to plate a roast chicken on her expensive china, but there wasn't enough counter space, so she was balancing plates on the toaster. "Watch your elbow," she snapped at me as I tried to help. God, this place is a shoebox. I can't breathe in here. Dinner was an exercise in denial. My mother talked incessantly about people I didn't know, members of her old social club she no longer attended, neighbors she deemed tacky. She was desperately trying to maintain the illusion that this was just a temporary setback, a strategic downsizing, rather than a total collapse. "I ran into Mrs. Vanderbilt at the market," she said, picking at her chicken. She asked why we missed the spring gala. I told her we were focusing on travel this year. Europe in the fall, perhaps. I looked at my father. He was cutting his meat with aggressive force. They couldn't afford Europe. They could barely afford the condo fees. The restitution payments to the trust, which I used to maintain the manor, took a significant chunk of their remaining income. "Dad," I said, trying to bridge the gap. "How is the consulting going?" He had started a small business consulting firm after his main company imploded post-scandal. "It's fine," he snapped. "Small fish. Nobody with vision. Everyone wants to cut corners these days." The irony was so thick I almost choked on my water. "And you," my mother pointed her fork at me. "I hear you're letting just anyone into the manor these days. Margaret told me you have 20 students. 20 children running around on those hardwood floors. You're going to ruin the finish." "The floors are fine, Mom," I said calmly. "And the house loves the noise. It was too quiet before." "It's undignified," she sniffed. "Turning a historic estate into a daycare." "It's a music school," I corrected her. "And it pays the bills." Which is more than can be said for, I stopped myself. I didn't want to be cruel. I didn't need to be. The reality of their beige walls was punishment enough. But then, the conversation took a turn I had been dreading. "Speaking of bills," my father said, finally looking at me. His eyes were bloodshot. "The market has been volatile." My portfolio took a hit. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "We were thinking," my mother jumped in, her voice taking on that sugary, manipulative tone. "Since the house is fully paid off, and since you have all that income from the students, maybe we could renegotiate the restitution. Just pause it for a few months. Until we get back on our feet." I put my fork down. I looked at them, really looked at them. They hadn't changed. They hadn't learned. They still saw me not as a daughter but as a resource. A tap to be turned on when they were thirsty. "No," I said. The air left the room. "Excuse me." My father glared. "No," I repeated. "The restitution is court-ordered, Dad. It goes into the trust for the house maintenance. The roof needs repairs this year. The boiler is acting up. That money isn't mine to give you. It belongs to the estate. You are the estate, my mother hissed. You can do whatever you want. You're just choosing to punish us. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Seeing us like this? I don't enjoy it at all, I said honestly. It breaks my heart. But I won't enable you anymore. Grandma enabled you for 10 years, and look where it got us. You stole from her. You have to pay it back. That is how the world works. You ungrateful little, my father started to rise. Stop it. The voice came from the hallway. We all turned. Megan was standing there. She had just arrived from work. She was wearing her dental receptionist uniform, scrubs with cartoon teeth on them. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked tired but she stood tall. Megan, Mom said, switching gears. Tell your sister she's being unreasonable. She's not being unreasonable, Mom, Megan said, walking into the room and dropping her bag on the floor. She's being an adult. Something we never learned how to be. My parents stared at her in shock. Megan, the golden child, the one who used to whine until she got a Porsche, was standing in cheap scrubs defending me. I take the bus every day, Megan said, looking at our father. I stand on my feet for 8 hours listening to people complain about root canals. And you know what? I sleep better now than I ever did when I was driving that car I didn't earn. She turned to me. Hi, Mia. Sorry I'm late. The bus broke down. Hi, Megan, I smiled. There's plenty of chicken. Megan sat down next to me. She reached for the serving spoon, and for the first time in our lives, it felt like we were on the same side of the table. Back on the porch with Aunt Margaret, I finished recounting the story. She really said that? Margaret asked, a smile spreading across her face. She did, I said. Megan comes over on Tuesdays now. She's helping me with the marketing for the school. She's actually really good at it. She designed a logo. She's trying. And your parents? They're miserable, I said. But they're surviving. And I realized something, Aunt Margaret. I can't fix them. I can't make them happy. Their unhappiness is a hole they dug themselves. Margaret reached over and squeezed my hand. Eleanor was right about you. You're not just strong, Mia. You're wise. That night, after Margaret left, I walked through the house turning off the lights. I stopped in the living room. The moonlight was streaming in through the bay window, illuminating the sleek curves of my Yamaha Grand. I sat down at the bench. I didn't play. I just listened to the silence. It wasn't a lonely silence anymore. It was a peaceful one. The house was no longer a stage for a play I didn't know the lines to. It was my sanctuary. My phone buzzed on the music stand. It was a text from Megan. Megan, thanks for dinner last Sunday. Sorry about Mom and Dad. Also, I finished the flyer for the summer recital. Check your email. P.S. Can I come over early next Tuesday? I want to hear you play that Debussy piece again. I smiled and typed back, come whenever you want. You have a key. I had given her a key last week. Not to the parents. Just to Megan. Because she was learning the one lesson Grandma tried to teach us all: you don't inherit a home. You build one. It has been exactly 1 year since the party. 1 year since the Porsche, the lawyers, and the explosion that shattered my family and put it back together in a shape that actually made sense. Tonight, the house is full. But not with socialites or business partners. It is the night of the first annual student recital at the Eleanor School of Music. 30 folding chairs are set up in the living room. Parents are squeezing in, holding bouquets of flowers and cell phones ready to record. The air smells of floor wax and nervous energy. I am standing by the piano, adjusting the height of the bench for Toby, my youngest student. He is wearing a clip-on tie and looks terrified. Just like we practiced, Toby, I whisper to him. Mistakes are just unexpected jazz. Keep going. He giggles, relaxes his shoulders, and begins to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. It's choppy and he hits a B flat that shouldn't be there, but he finishes with a flourish. The room erupts in applause. His mother, sitting in the front row, is beaming with tears in her eyes. I look to the back of the room. Megan is there. She's manning the refreshments table, pouring punch. She gives me a thumbs up. She looks healthy. She's dating a guy named Mark now, a high school history teacher who drives a Honda Civic. He treats her like a person, not a trophy, and I've never seen her happier. My parents aren't here. I invited them. I sent them a formal invitation. My mother texted back, "We have a prior engagement. Good luck with your little show." I know they don't have an engagement. They are sitting in their condo, stewing in their resentment, unable to face a room where they are no longer the stars. And that's okay. I realized that my invitation wasn't about them showing up. It was about me keeping the door open, even if they choose not to walk through it. After the last student bows, a 14-year-old girl who played a hauntingly beautiful rendition of Satie, I step up to the piano. Thank you all for coming, I say. My voice is steady. Before we finish, I want to play a piece for the woman who made this possible. My grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore. The room goes quiet. I sit down. I look at the framed photo of Grandma I keep on the piano lid. In the photo, she is young, sitting at the old Steinway, her head thrown back in laughter. I place my hands on the keys. I don't play a sad song. I play a waltz. Bright, intricate, and full of life. It's a song about dancing even when the floor is shaking. It's a song about joy that is earned, not bought. As my fingers fly across the keys, I think about the journey. I think about the scapegoat and the golden child. For so long, I thought my role was to be the sponge for the family's dysfunction. I thought if I just absorbed enough of their neglect, enough of their criticism, eventually they would run out of poison and start loving me. But that's not how it works. The poison doesn't run out. You just have to step out of the stream. I look at the empty space on the carpet where the old piano stood. The dents are almost gone now, faded with time and foot traffic. The ghost of the Steinway has been exorcised, replaced by the music of a new generation. Grandma didn't just leave me a house. She didn't just leave me money. Those things are nice, but they are temporary. Wood rots. Markets crash. Cars rust. The real inheritance was the truth. She forced me to see my parents for who they were, not who I wanted them to be. She forced me to see myself not as the victim, but as the architect of my own life. She taught me that no is a complete sentence. She taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about alignment. And most of all, she taught me that you don't need a $95,000 instrument to make beautiful music. You just need the courage to play your own song. I hit the final chord. It rings out, filling the high ceilings of the manor, vibrating in the chest of everyone in the room. For a moment there is silence. And in that silence, I feel her. I feel Grandma's hand on my shoulder, light as a bird. My brave girl. The applause starts, loud and genuine. I stand up and bow. I see Megan clapping the hardest. I see Aunt Margaret wiping her eyes. I see my students looking at me with wide, inspired eyes. I am Mia Whitmore. I am a teacher. I am a sister. I am a survivor. And I am finally, truly, home. Thank you for journeying with me through the storm and into the light. This story was personal, painful, but ultimately liberating. Before you go, I want to share a few hard-earned lessons that I hope you never have to learn the way I did. True legacy isn't material, my parents chased status, cars, and appearances, and they ended up with nothing. Grandma left a legacy of integrity, art, and truth, and it lives on in everyone she touched. Build a life that feels good on the inside, not just one that looks good on the outside. I want to hear from you now. What is the biggest lesson you took away from my story? Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family to save yourself? If you believe that standing up for the truth is always the right choice, please type "good" in the comments below. Your interaction helps this story reach others who might be suffering in silence, letting them know they are not alone. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are the composer of your own life. Play it loud.